Okay, just a reminder, and now we're going to turn on the microphones, correct? We're up. I just want to remind some that might be watching online that we're not going to be meeting on the 21st or the 28th. We'll pick it back up in whatever, what's that, Wednesday, the 3rd? I think it's January 3rd. Is that too close? Or do you guys want a whole month off? Do I see 3, 3, 3, 4, 4, 5, 5? Okay, we'll try to do it that first week in January, which would be the 3rd. And the handout, Lord willing, will be available Sunday, so you can try to get it. I'll put it back in that file, and it will be number 29. We'll see how all that comes together. So right now we're on number 28. Anybody need a copy of it tonight? We're good? All right. We're going to jump in chapter 12 of Revelation, verse 7. But we're going to just take a little chunk here. We'll go 7 to 12. So who'd like to read with the, okay, Jan, with a good microphone? And
it's on anyway.
Yep. 7 to 12 of Revelation 12. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. And there was war in heaven, Michael and his angels waging war with the dragon. The dragon and his angels waged war, and they were not strong enough, and there was no longer a place found for them in heaven. And the great dragon was thrown down, the serpent of old, who is called the devil and Satan, who deceives the whole world. He was thrown down to the earth, and his angels were thrown down with him. Then I heard a loud voice in heaven saying, Now the salvation and the power and the kingdom of our God and the authority of his Christ have come. For the accuser of our brethren has been thrown down, he who accuses them before our God day and night. And they overcame him because of the blood of the Lamb and because of the word of their testimony, and they did not love their life even when faced with death. For this reason rejoice, O heavens, and you who dwell in them. Woe to the earth and the sea, because the devil has come down to you, having great wrath, knowing that he has only a short time.
Okay, interesting to have this come out the way it does in chapter 12. We talked about the book of Revelation being split in half. First half is general information. Second half is specific details that fall back into that, according to Jack. You don't have to agree with me. But as you look at this, we saw in chapter 12 these signs in heaven. One was a woman with child, which was ultimately the birth of the Messiah. Then we saw in 3 through 6 another sign, a great red dragon. And again, his reign over with 7 heads and 10 horns over thousands of years of human history, especially aimed at Israel. And 3 and 4 covers that. And then the angels that worked with him. And then in 5 and 6, she gave birth to a son, male child. This is Christ the Messiah. Christ is Greek. Messiah is Hebrew. Both mean the same thing. And obviously it's him because he's going to reign with a rod of iron, rule all of the nations, and he was caught up to God. We saw his ascension. The woman, Israel, fled into the wilderness, and so we've already moved all the way up from the birth in, say, 1 AD, maybe 4 BC, all the way up to where she flees, so we're up to a couple thousand plus years later, just in those verses. Bam, 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 bam. And you kind of look at it and you go, why is that stuff in there? Why all of a sudden, out of chronology, the book of Revelation is not chronological. It doesn't go this, then this, then this. It's not telling you a story in the life of somebody. It's just giving visions, John sharing visions that he sees at God's opportunity, what God shares with him. And so this information shared, and what you see, what contrasts one of them is, chapter 1 is Jesus Christ as God in the book of Revelation. Then all of a sudden in chapter 12, you're looking at Jesus Christ as man, as being born in Israel as the sacrifice who comes to die for the sins of the world. So major contrast between the two. So why flip back and in chapter 12 to this scenario and what's happening here? Why the Messiah, the devil, the birth of Israel's birth of the Messiah, the devil, and then information about the male child? Why do you think that's in there like that? Any clues, anything stand out to you as we consider a revelation of Jesus Christ, the overall big picture of the book? Before we move on, Linda?
Well, I see that as he's just bringing it all into a concise idea, bringing us back to seeing the whole picture again, and keeping that in the forefront of our mind, as this is a revelation of Jesus Christ. We don't get wrapped up so much in the other as we do in who this book is about.
Okay, good. You're getting background information. Tiffany?
Also, I think it's kind of setting up for when the Antichrist and that kind of stuff starts happening, and then that great tribulation at the end.
Very good, because he's going to focus on who?
The Antichrist and the beast.
Antichrist is going to focus on...
Oh, the Antichrist is focusing on.
Destroying Israel.
I couldn't hear.
I'm not understanding your question.
The Antichrist is going to focus on the nation of Israel, is what I'm asking about. He's the anti-Messiah. See, I think a lot of people think he's just a ruler of the world. His focus is Israel. That's what he really wants people to believe, that he's God. And so you're right. Some of this is setting things up and explaining some things as to why, even when you get up to the beast, the false prophet, the 144,000 are Jews in chapter 14. You get to the final bowls, which are the details concerning the seventh trumpet. You get into the destruction of Babylon, which has been Israel's arch enemy, whatever you want to call it, for thousands of years. She gets destroyed. You finally have Christ himself coming back as King of Kings and Lord of Lords, because that's who he is. That's who he was born to be. So all those pieces are kind of being put together here, and we're getting a glimpse. Then also you jump down to verse 7 where we're studying now and looking at this, and you realize there's a war that has not taken place in heaven up to this point. Why not? It's not on your question. Why wait to the end to have war in heaven and kick Satan out of heaven? Yes?
Maybe because that then he has less time to be completely just down there and doing extremely annoying stuff.
That's one way to look at it. Extremely annoying stuff. Yes, that is very true, but he's left them here for a reason. The same thing you're struggling with right now, when you look at politics, you look at America, you ask, why, God? Why? Why did the election go that way? Why did this happen? Why is this happening? It's the same thing. Satan is the ultimate representation of that. He's allowing him to be here for a reason. God's in control. Satan's not. God is allowing him to do things, and for people to be exposed because they're following Satan. You have Satan worshipers. It's starting to explode in America, Satan worship. In schools, where high schoolers and junior hires are starting to have clubs for Satan. They've attempted that for a long time, but now it is being not only protected but promoted, and it's growing a lot. So God is allowing Satan to be around up until the end because he has a purpose for him. He has a use for him. He's allowing him to be there to expose some things, to reveal things. That's why you put stuff through trial, through test. You check something out. You ever, just for a simple illustration, you ever see one of those ropes hanging from a tree that's like 20 feet long, and this gigantic oak tree, and you just visited? We did one of those when we were down in Texas visiting, and my son John goes out there and he grabs onto that thing, he just swings right out over the lake. What would Jack do?
Check the rope.
I would test the rope. I'd be sitting there jerking on it, checking it out. Then I'd put John on it and let him go out, because that's part of my test. But yeah, John's more a free thinker, and he's more relaxed that way. But this is what constantly God is doing as Satan comes in, the accuser of the brethren that we're going to talk about, the one who is prowls about as a roaring lion seeking someone to devour. God is allowing that. He's not going to win over believers. And God is controlling what he can even do, as you see with Job. So here he finally comes and God says, okay, we're done. We're done having the devil around heaven. All done. So now we're going to ask some questions related to this. What occurred in heaven in verse 7?
There was war.
There was war. War, 4171 means
Battle.
battle
Fight.
and strife,
Fight.
a fight, combat, some kind of engagement of a couple armies of what they really are, angelic armies. And so here's this war that's going on. Who was fighting this war? I gave you two people there. Who's the first one?
Michael.
Michael.
Michael is called The archangel. The archangel. I keep reading stuff. I don't know. I need to die so I can relax. I keep reading commentary stuff where he's one just this past week. He's one of the archangels, and I'm going, I don't know of any other archangels in the Bible. How can he be one of them? And why would you use a definite article with him if he's only one of the archangels? He's the archangel. He's the top guy. And then, and I put down their messenger and his angels, so they're God's messengers. And then who's the arch enemy?
The dragon.
The dragon and
His angels.
his angels, which is reference to who?
Messengers of Satan.
Messengers of Satan. So the dragon is the serpent. In the garden is the devil, is Satan. Clearly laid out here in 1404, what specifically, and I don't like an answer that's in multiple locations, so I'll have to decline it if you give it to me. But what's the definition for dragon?
No, we don't want to give you one.
I know, really, that's what I
The
thought.
seeing one.
The seen one, okay, could go back to the root word there that means to see,
A mythical monster.
which is kind of, and that's the one we
That's
don't
the
want. The dragon is not a mythical monster. Okay, he's a serpent.
I had
What-
large serpent.
Okay, large serpent, because he just told you up in verse 3, a great red dragon, all right, which carries the idea of being significant or being important. But he's also, the dragon is also the devil and Satan. You can put those in there. That's who he is. But it's just interesting. The problem with dragon is you got evolutionists who don't want there to be such a thing as dragons. They're all mythical. And it's just the opposite. Dragons were real. They have found so many evidences of dragons, whether they be China, where they actually use them to pull their cart, what do we call that thing? But it was fancier than that.
Chariot.
Chariot type of thing for the emperor. They used them. They tamed them, just like God said man could tame all the animals. They were found in England. When their knights went out and slayed dragons, they were really killing dragons. These are just small dinosaurs of some sort, as we would call them now, terrible lizards. And they're real, and they have too much evidence now. Why they call them mythical, even the Loch Ness Monster, there's good possibility, sorry Bernie, but there's a really good possibility that that creature we know lived at some time, that it may have been still living at the time when people were making sightings. Whether it's living today, don't know. All right, this world's cursed. Over 90% of all animal species have already died, and they didn't die from a meteorite hitting the Caribbean or the Gulf of Mexico. All right, it's just part of it, and maybe 95. I've heard high numbers, and you're going, that's weird. So you haven't even seen most of the animals God created in person, Paul.
Really? I mean, that concordance is usually,
That concordance.
that's concordance, I got that.
It's pretty good most of the time.
And then it's got that in there.
Yeah.
I was
You know
kinda
why?
surprised.
This concordance is based off of,
I thought it was NAS.
I don't have my other book up here. It's based off of the Greek lexicon. If you go through and you compare them, oftentimes you'll see identical definitions coming right out of Bauer and Gingrich, that lexicon we're talking about.
Lexicon.
Yep.
But I
So
always-
he just copied it right out of there. They're the ones that started it. And why they're going that route? Because it's back, I think it's back in the 1800s. I'd have to look at the date on that.
Then another thing, and I don't want to go on a rabbit trail.
Okay, no rabbits.
Oh,
But, and I don't, because of my English, but when it says Michael and his angels, that would be like a group that has to be with, or are they just saying in addition, the angels of God?
Michael, the archangel, and all of his angels that work with him is all it's trying to say.
So-
His army of angels,
So
the
that's
heavenly
what I'm
host.
Okay, so there'd be other angels other than Michael's angels.
Yeah, they're either Michael's angels or God's angels, and they all work for God. Where Satan has his angels, with all work for Satan. So
Right.
those are the two groups.
Okay, that's what I wanted to
Yeah.
separate. So
There aren't any others. There aren't any third group renegades that are running for office. No independent angels. You got Democrats and Republicans, and you can decide which one's which. But yeah, there's only those two groups.
All right, I just wanted to make sure.
So it's not a subcategory of angels. Michael's in charge of these guys, and there's other
Right.
angels over here.
He's in charge of all of God's angels as the archangel.
Yeah.
That's what I was trying to
He's
get.
like the second,
Yeah.
line,
They answer to him.
So there's
sort of a rabbit trail here. So, and I can't remember where it is, but there's reference to Satan as having been the chiefest of all the angels or something like that.
At some point.
At
Isaiah
some
14,
point.
Ezekiel
So
28.
Michael is probably the one that filled in behind him when he fell.
They guess.
That's just a guess.
Because of, how, again, there's questions about this.
Is that in Ezekiel?
Isaiah 14 and Ezekiel 28 are the two, and I don't remember which one covers that. But I'm looking to see here.
Isaiah 14, he said.
12 talks about how you have fallen from heaven, O star of the morning sun, and goes on.
And the 5 I wills of 13 and 14, but I think then it must be Ezekiel 28.
Ezekiel.
Yeah, 28, 14 of Ezekiel 28. Ezekiel 28, verse 14. He says, you were the, and it's not the, again, this is where some confusion comes from. There's no definite article there. Ezekiel 28, 14, then you were an anointed cherub who covers, and I placed you there, and talk about the garden. You were on the holy mountain of God. You walked in the midst of the stones of fire. You were blameless in all your ways from the day you were created until unrighteousness was found in you. So go down, calls him a covering cherub in verse 16. Your heart was lifted up in verse 17 because of your beauty. You corrupted your wisdom by reason of your splendor. I cast you to the ground. I put you before kings that they may see you. That may be a reference ultimately to what we're talking about tonight. By the multitude of your iniquities and the unrighteousness of your trade, you profaned your sanctuaries. Therefore I have brought fire from the midst of you. It has consumed you. And I have turned you to ashes on the earth, which is very interesting as to how that's all going to be carried out. But see, there's a double reference here. The king of Tyre is being referred to, and also Satan behind him. And verse 13, you were in Eden, the garden of God. Every precious stone was your covering, the ruby, the topaz, diamond, beryl, onyx, jasper, lapis lazuli, turquoise, and emerald. The golden workmanship of your settings was in you on the day that you have seen. I think they're getting it from that you were the anointed cherub, and they may grab onto that and try to make him be higher up.
In the second half of 12 there, you had the seal of perfection.
Right.
Full of wisdom and perfect in beauty.
Right. But that's Michael also.
Right.
He didn't lose it. So I don't know what to do with where his position was, if he really was the top angel or up on that level. Because Michael's only referred to 5 times in the Bible, but he's always referred to as the archangel. And so you'd have to go back, and I think one of those is in Daniel. So it's already clear back in the ark. But again, Satan would have fallen early on. Michael is in chapter 10 twice, verse 13 of Daniel 10:13. But the prince of the kingdom of Persia was withstanding me for 21 days, and behold, Michael, one of the chief princes, there he's called. Interesting. But again, I want to go back and look at how that translates out of the Hebrew. Came to help me, for I had been left there with the kings of Persia. And then down in verse 20, he said, do you understand why I came to you? But I shall now return to fight against the prince of Persia. So I'm going forth, and behold, the prince of the Greece about to come. However, I will tell you what is inscribed in the writing of truth. Yet there is no one who stands firmly with me against these forces except Michael, your prince. So there's 2 places mentioned, and then there's 3 places, one in Jude. He may be mentioned again in Daniel 12. But it's not as common as people think. Gabriel only shows up 2 times in the whole Bible. It's Christmas carols that made him popular.
And the question is, where does Gabriel fit in with?
He's just one of the angels.
He just got his name published.
Fit in with who?
Okay. I'll take
Okay, right, okay.
He was the vice archangel.
Huh?
He was the vice archangel.
Yeah, he's not an archangel. He's never referred to as that. But he has a special role, and so you kind of go, is it special because of what he did, or does he really have a higher position? Don't know. But he gets his name mentioned. Many angels don't. Most angels don't. So here we have this large, significant serpent who's red, and don't really understand why and how all that, but he is. What was the outcome of this war in verse 8? What happened to the enemies?
They were not strong enough.
Not strong enough. So, which means what? If you look up the word strong, they're not.
Well, they were defeated.
Okay, they're defeated because they're not able to prevail. That's what it means to not be strong enough.
Didn't have enough power.
They didn't have enough power. So who is more powerful? Not just Michael, but Michael and his angels. And ultimately that power comes from God, and it was time for Satan to go.
Bye-bye.
So Michael's always had that. People wrestle and struggle with this whole thing about the Holy Spirit being the only one that can restrain the devil, and yet it's told right there in Scripture. And so I've explained, I didn't hand this out tonight, I forgot I could have. Given you a handout on Michael the Archangel. Most of you already have that. If you want one, see me. But that Michael the Archangel is the restrainer who is removed in 2 Thessalonians 2. He's the one in Daniel 12 who's always been guarding Israel. So yes, he is mentioned there 3 times in the book of Daniel. That's the one who's always been guarding Israel. He has a special role with Daniel. With Israel. In Jude, he has a special role where he guards the body of Moses. So this is his role that he's played when Satan is disputing with him over the body of Moses. It's Michael who steps in. Michael. That's the one who has a greater role and a stronger role. And so even when it comes to this, he prevails over the devil, which is what it means to be strong. And then how's the eviction take place there? This is just an eviction notice.
There was no longer found a place for them in heaven.
Yeah, sorry, my A is out of place there.
Yes, it was.
No longer a place found for them in heaven. I have to give you boo-boos once in a while to let you know I'm still human.
Flip the words around.
And then, so what does that mean? What does it mean there's no longer a place found?
I changed it to, there is no longer found a place.
Okay, you can reword it.
That's what I did.
Okay.
We
Vine-
fixed it for you.
Vine said, frequently in the Gospels and in Acts, it's a room of a place which a person or a thing occupies.
Okay, so they want to get the word room in there because it's used in John 14. I go to prepare a room or a place for you, and they say, I have a mansion up in glory. And it literally means just place. And so if I have a place, if Ephesians 4:27, don't give, be angry, sin not, do not let the sun go down your wrath, ultimately because unless you give place to the devil, and that's a paraphrase, but I just missed that one up. But that word, same word. You've given him a place. It's a foothold. It's something, it's a location to stand on. And so there's no longer a place for him in heaven. And this is, I wrote down in this space, not even a limited spot or space was detected for them. No room. You're not welcome here. So this was an eviction notice that's given to the devil at this point in time. How long has he been there?
Since he was created.
Which has been at least
6,000.
6,000 years. He's had access. Pretty amazing that he no longer has access. He knows what's coming. He can read. He thinks he can still fight it, and he keeps trying, but he knows what prophecy tells us about him. So what happened to the dragon and his angels in verse 9? Now you have expulsion. Thrown down. This word means cast down,
Cast out.
cast out,
Flung.
to throw out, to what?
Flung.
Flung out, thrust, hurled. What's the root word we're talking about here? Balo, which is where we get the word ball. And that it just means to throw, or to cast, to hurl. And so that's all the idea. The down is implied because of where he's going from heaven to earth. It's not even built, well, let's see. It could be in the word. Let me check. I forgot. Thrown down. No, it's not even in the word. So they just put that in there so I have an idea where he's headed. And what's the exposure? What are his names now finally revealed? Who's the person? The serpent of old. This is what individual?
The serpent from the Garden of Eden.
The snake in the Garden of Eden.
Deceiver of Eve.
Deceiver of Eve. Okay, that's the first reference here, and that's why it's a serpent of old, because he goes back. In this case, more than 4,000 years. What's his position?
Called the devil.
Okay, and the devil means
Satan.
It doesn't mean Satan, it means,
Enemy of God?
I'm sorry?
Slanderer.
Slanderer.
No, okay.
And another one that comes out is, which fits in with the idea of slanderer, is accuser. That's why he's referred to a little later as accuser of the brethren. But the word devil means slanderer or accuser. How would you like to have that name? You ever look up your name and figure out why your parents called you what they called you? One of two reasons, well, three reasons. Either you're named after somebody, or they like the meaning of your name, or they like the sound of your name. It's usually one of those three reasons is why they pick it. But if there's a meaning behind it, which we gave to our kids, and we told them what the meanings were on their names. Timothy, gift of God, and the others fit in as well. And so as you look at this picture here, he has a name. He's called accuser and slanderer, and that's not what I want to be known for. We have some of those people in the news today. Every time they speak, they're tearing somebody down. The problem is the news supports them. The news is okay with that. Yeah, tear Trump down, tear DeSantis down, tear whatever, whoever your enemy is. But they're really just like the devil. They're just slanderers and accusers. What's the practice of this individual? It gives you the name Satan because Satan deceives the whole world. And what's this word mean? What does Satan mean? Adversary can carry the idea of enemy or opponent. So as you look through here, the person is the same one who was in the garden with Eve, the snake, serpent. His position is accuser, slander. That's just what he does. When he's around God, that's all God gets out of him. Accusing one person after another. And what's interesting, and it's slim but possible that your name has been mentioned in heaven off the lips. Does Satan have lips? Off the lips of Satan.
Does God have any?
Do angels have lips?
Have you considered? Yeah. And then you get down to the one, Satan, his name, the adversary, the enemy, the opponent, who deceives the whole world. Again, many of his followers are revealed every day by their lies. We have people that cannot talk in the news without lying. And they never apologize, they never explain it, they never go back and have to justify what they did. God will bring that up. All liars will end up in the lake of fire.
What did you say for number one, the person?
The person is the serpent of old, which I put equals the snake in the Garden of Eden.
Okay.
As a reference back to that. And somebody else gave another one.
Deceiver of Eve.
Deceiver of Eve is another way you can put that in there. So where were the dragon and his angels thrown down to?
Earth.
Earth. Is that literal or figurative?
Literal.
Literal. That's where he's being confined. And it's going to go from heaven, very broad, to earth, narrow down. What's his next location?
Israel.
Fire.
The abyss.
Oh, yeah.
Then he's released for a short time, then the lake of fire.
Yeah.
And God it's going to take at least 6,000 years to make that happen. He's not in a hurry. Satan is being used, and he thinks he can play the chess game and beat God, and nope. So what did John hear in verse 10? A voice in heaven. Okay, we don't know who. It leaves it very general, but what four things did the voice say had just come? And I stress the word now, which you're not going to pick up in the English, but that little word now in verse 10 specifically means at the present time, is what the idea behind it. Henceforth, at the present time, here's what's going to happen. Four things that the voice says. What one does he say regarding deliverance?
The salvation.
Salvation, that word means deliverance. And what?
Eternal.
Okay. Salvation can be eternal, but in the word itself, it means deliverance or preservation.
Welfare.
Carries the idea of what?
Welfare?
I don't know. Rescue is the idea. Salvation is a form of sozo.
Well, it's.
To deliver, to rescue, to save is the word behind it. So you get welfare out of that, but it's not directly the meaning of the word. How about regarding dominance?
Power.
Okay, there's power. This word means
Might and strength.
might, strength. Specifically, it's the word dunamis that carries the idea of what, Rocky? Ability. Okay, it carries the idea of ability and refers ultimately, in this case, to omnipotence. That's the power of Christ, of his Christ. So the rescue of his Christ, the deliverance and preservation of his Christ, the power of his Christ, what does he say regarding his domain?
The kingdom of our God.
Now he generalizes with the kingdom of our God, and that word, literally kingdom, means
Sovereignty or authority?
okay, it can be sovereignty, but as long as you use it the right way. People want sovereignty to mean that God controls everything and doesn't let anything happen that happened, even evil. And that is not what sovereignty means. Sovereignty really, even in the Old Testament, you really should translate it more often kingdom than you do sovereignty. But it does fit in with that idea. What's another word that fits there?
Reign.
Reign.
Royalty.
Okay, it can be royalty in the sense of a rule, a royal rule as part of that kingdom. And then the last one, dominion, is in reference to the authority of his Christ. That carries the idea of dominion. Very good. Just kidding. Power to act or license to reign.
Ruling.
A ruling, jurisdiction.
Influence,
And what?
influence,
Okay, it could tie in with that idea.
Capacity.
So those four things come out of the voice. Capacity, again, to rule in this case. But the first three, the salvation, the power, the kingdom of our God, and the authority of his Christ, all those things have been taking place for us. We have reaped the benefits of salvation, of God's power, of God's kingdom, because we've entered in. We talked about that with the Sermon on the Mount. Seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness is what believers are truly entering into. They've already entered into his reign, his royal rule. And now the idea of the dominion or the authority of his Christ, the jurisdiction, that he alone is Lord. He alone is master. He's the only one who is in control. Satan doesn't even come close, although he tries to give you the impression that you're making an equal choice between Satan and Christ. Antichrist is nothing compared to the Christ. And the Antichrist is just a man that Satan works through. Any questions there? Am I moving too fast? So why did these things occur in verse 10?
Because the accuser of our brethren has been thrown down.
Okay, because the accuser of our brethren has been thrown down again. And so I had you look up the word accuser, and that word 2725b means what?
A prosecutor.
Okay, what?
A prosecutor.
Okay, can carry the idea of one who's prosecuting.
To charge with some offense.
To charge with some offense. Okay, good. Linda?
Complainant.
Complacence?
No.
Oh.
Complainant.
Oh, a complainant.
Yeah.
Now you're going legal on me.
Yeah, the one who brings the complaint.
Oh, the one who brings a complaint, okay? So he's just speaking accusations is all this idea is, and it's his lifestyle. That says the word devil, the accuser. So who does Satan address his accusations at in this passage?
The same God.
Before our God. Why? Why be accusing people before God? Okay, that's who we're responsible to. Is that how you said that? Okay. So why is he wanting to do that? What is Satan's goal, Paul?
He's trying to humiliate God, saying, look,
Okay.
you can't even control.
Try to humiliate God by bringing up that his children are out of line. Okay, way out of line sometimes.
You're a really bad parent.
Yeah, real bad parent. God, you're a bad God. You're a weak God. You're a limited God. So he's constantly trying to bring that up. And what does God do for thousands of years? He puts up with it. What do you think the angels around him are doing? Four living creatures, seraphim, cherubim, angelic hosts, all the saints that have gone on. What are they doing when they listen to this?
They're getting ready for verse 7.
Okay.
There was war in heaven.
Can't wait till he's out of here. What a nag. So he's doing it before God, and that's in heaven. How often does Satan accuse? Day and night. So I just slipped in the little words there. It's nonstop. And so again, when I ask people, what is heaven like? And the basic thing is a noisy place. And so in chapter 8, verse 1, what happened to heaven?
Silence.
There was silence in heaven. So who stopped talking? Satan stopped talking too.
Yeah.
That's interesting. But there's all kinds of stuff going on in heaven all the time. God can totally comprehend and be involved with every single thing happening. Every single person. Uh-oh.
Uh-oh.
What happened?
The doubter in the room.
Move the mic over there, Brian. We got to hear this.
No. Where is it, Revelations 8:1 versus this right now?
Revelation 8:1 right now?
With this being here, I mean,
Good
I know this
question.
is...
That's a good question.
Well,
Where are we at?
because he could, if he's already thrown down, that's how it's silent in heaven.
So
He ain't-
that happens after 8:1.
Okay, when is he thrown down and he knows he only has a short time?
Well, that's what I...
Got to be toward the end of the 70th week of Daniel. It's just a wrap up.
And where's Revelations 8:1?
That's the beginning of the 7 trumpets.
Oh, crud.
So
That
they're, well, it's in that same time frame. It's pretty close because they're only the day of the Lord. Remember, the day of the Lord is only the last part of the 70th week of Daniel.
I mean, that answers the question why he ain't talking. He got thrown down.
Okay, so could he be working from earth to carry out his activities during the day of the Lord? So again, we're not given a time frame, but it could be happening simultaneously while all this is going on. He's doing his work from earth.
I'm going to make a note.
Good question, Paul. Okay, you move the mic back so
Don't want no more questions from you.
we don't want to overstress him. How did the brethren overcome him in verse 11?
Because of the blood of the Lamb.
Okay, because the blood of the Lamb, that was the payment of sin. And what was the profession of faith?
Because of the word of their testimony.
Okay, so what 2 things do you see happening here?
What Christ did and how we responded.
Okay, what Christ did and what we do because of what Christ did, right?
Yeah.
We're speaking up. Remember Romans 10, 9, and 10? Anybody have that memorized?
Confess with your mouth, Jesus is Lord, believe in your heart God raised him from the dead, you should be saved.
Verse 9, and then verse 10 says, because with the mouth... What? Okay, they got to hear you on the microphone, so you got to be loud enough for me to hear you. Okay, you can look it up. Open book exam, always. Every time when Isaac's teaching, almost called you Tiffany, sorry. when Isaac's teaching and he refers to a verse, I've made it my habit my whole life. Now I'm sitting back under somebody, which I haven't been doing. I make it my plan and my practice. Every single verse that's brought up to me, I look it up. I don't trust preachers, and I've told you not to trust me. I want a bigger context. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. I want I'm looking at some stuff. Why is this verse coming up? How does it fit in with what's being shared? And so you always check out verses. So what's verse 10 say?
For with the heart man believes, resulting in righteousness.
Sorry, I reversed it.
And with the mouth he confesses, resulting in salvation.
And what's he saying here? How did they overcome?
The word of their testimony.
The word is what? What's the word? What's the word in that word?
I don't know.
For some reason I don't have it written here. I think I know what the word is, but I'm just making sure I don't say it wrong. Word is logon. So logos, which is basically the message of their testimony. So they're taking a stand, they're opening their mouth, and they're professing. That reveals a true believer. Not the only thing that does that, but it reveals a true believer. If a person refuses to share Christ with others, there's something wrong. But if they do, and they also believe, you got the trust idea, the faith and the heart. And then I forgot verse 10 reverses verse 9. 9 says, no, I just reversed it myself.
That if you confess with your
confess
mouth,
and then believe. And then verse 10 says, for with the mouth.
With the heart man believes.
No, then it goes back to believe and then to the mouth.
Yeah.
Okay, and they do reverse. They're switching there for some reason. But the point I'm trying to make here is, it's obviously his work, his blood, his sacrificial payment on the cross. But then also with that, part of overcoming is our profession of faith. Because of the word of their testimony. That is critical, that we stand up with the truth, that we proclaim it. And there's many people who won't. And then you start questioning, okay, were they really saved? Why are they holding back? So I had you look up the word overcame. They've overcome him. 35:28 means, I'm sorry, louder?
To prevail.
To prevail,
Overpower.
conquer, overpower,
M victorious.
to end victoriously?
M.
Or they are victorious, okay? Jim? Okay. The word, remember this is the word we name our kids. We were talking about names and what the meanings are. If you want to name your kid Victory, you name them
Nike. Nike.
Nike or Nicholas or something along that line, which means victory or victorious. And so that's the idea of the word here. That's what this word is. Overcame, conquering, prevailing, they're victorious. How far did their love for God go?
Even to death.
Even to death. And we were like Peter, aren't we? I would die for you. Peter, before the cock crows 3 times, twice you're going to deny me 3 times.
Yeah.
Is that how it says it? I hate roosters, so I don't even want to mention them, but we've always had vicious ones. Jim's into ducks attacking, but I'm into roosters. Oh, it was a rooster,
It
okay.
was a rooster, yeah.
Terrible rooster.
Wasn't it a duck too? Didn't you have ducks?
No,
Okay.
oh,
Geese are bad.
only when my brother swung.
So you ducked that one
I
really
ducked,
well.
yeah.
Okay. There were ducks there. All right, even to death. That's important that people go to that extreme. You can talk of what you're going to promise to God you're going to do. It's not until it actually comes down to it that you know whether or not it's real. And so are anybody jumping to test their faith and see how far they'll go? Not really, but you may have an opportunity in the coming days. How was God's heavens, the word used here, commanded to respond in verse 12?
Rejoice.
They're commanded to rejoice, and this word means to
cheer,
to which?
to cheer
To
and make merry.
Cheer, make merry,
Make glad.
make
celebrate,
glad, and what?
Celebrate.
Celebrate, be merry. It's a command. Heaven is told to celebrate. They're having a party because Satan has been thrown down. 6,000 years. And a lot of them are saying to God, what took you so long? You ever do that in a movie? You're watching a movie and the bad guy keeps letting somebody get away with things, and you're getting so mad because the bad guy's winning and he's going to get the girl, he's going to get the money, he's going to get everything. And in the last, God exposes, or man exposes the truth. Dennis.
The worst thing is they always run upstairs.
Could you explain yourself into the microphone, please? They always run upstairs, meaning they're supposed to be able to fall off and land on the table or something. Is that?
I don't know why they always do it. They either run upstairs or they run down to the basement where there's no way to get out. So they're trapped.
Okay. No, the upstairs is so they can fall off and land on the table when they get shot by the good guy. But they don't always get shot. Sometimes they just lose the girl, lose the money, lose the house, lose the whatever. And the guy rides off in the sunset with the girl. This is what's going to happen with the church. But it doesn't look that way some days. And it does not look that way in most of the world today. Many Christians are struggling greatly and not seeing a lot of daylight or hope, which is why we need to keep praying for people. So who are you? Let's see. Who are you who dwell in them? I'm trying to quote what's in the verse, but who are those people? They're what? Believers that have gone on to be with the Lord, so they don't have bodies yet.
Angels.
Angels.
Elders.
Elders, 24 elders.
Aren't they also believers?
They could be.
I saw two
If you agree with Jack.
I saw 2 groups, angels and believers, or saints.
Okay. So who else is included in the angels then?
Well, the cherubim and seraphim.
Cherubim, seraphim. Who are the 4 living creatures? That one's a hard one for people to nail down, if there's some unique creation of God. But you're looking at this, and it's all of those people that are up there. Whoever's up there, they're told to have a party, in essence, to cheer, make merry, be glad, to rejoice. And how was the earth supposed to respond to this party, to this time?
Whoa.
Woe to the earth and the sea. This word means...
An utterance.
Alas is one of them with an exclamation point. That's an expression of grief or denunciation. What else? What's that mean, kind of, to us? Somebody started to say more.
I started to say just utterance of grief.
Okay, utterance of grief. That's a good way to put it, Linda.
An expression of grief or denunciation.
Okay. So, not good for planet Earth. Now, stop and think about this for a second. What's the difference between him in heaven and him on earth? When he came to heaven with Job, chapters 1 and 2, what did God ask him?
Where you been?
Basically.
What you been up to?
Where have you been? Where have you come from? And where had he come from?
Yours.
Earth. He'd already been on the earth. So why is this different? Satan had access to the earth. He figured out what Job was doing. He went back then and dealt with Job and tried to get him to curse God and die like his wife wanted.
Where he's thrown out.
What's the difference now?
He's thrown out.
He's only on earth, so he's not up in heaven, which he accused God of day and night. Most of his time looks like he spent in heaven. You see that with the nonstop accusation. Now he's spending most of his time on earth. Not good for earth. That's part of the alas idea. And so the struggle here is he's going to devote his attention, because the next line comes in. Why did the voice pronounce woe to the earth? What was the arrival?
Because the devil has come down to you.
Has come down to you, and I just put down he's earthbound now. He's been limited. What's the anger level?
Rage.
He has great wrath. This is an outburst of anger. This word means, which word is this?
Orge.
Okay, is it orge? Have you guys look it up that way?
Wait, which
It's
one?
a form of organ.
Oh, wait.
Okay, it's not orge.
Thumos.
Yeah, it's thumos.
I was on the wrong one.
And that's why I put it's an outburst of anger. Orge is more of a settled condition, ultimately, typically seeking revenge. But it's just kind of like they go back, they sulk, they struggle, they figure, how can I pay him back? And they come up with a plan to get back at somebody. That's more orge. Thumos is the word wrath used by God. When Jesus Christ comes back in his retribution, that's thumos. This is going to be an outburst of anger on the part of Christ, bringing revenge to the earth when he judges it. Not going to be a pretty picture. It's exactly the opposite of what he did when he came as a baby. He gave man lots of time. And that's the anger part. And so how about the awareness?
Knowing.
Satan knowing that he only has
A short
time. I put down there a brief opportunity. This is a limited season to act. What's the word knowing there? It's just a form of oida, which is simply head knowledge. And where do you get that head knowledge from? Scripture. This is what God had told him. He knows this verse. He knows when I get kicked out, I only have a short time. So he believes what he reads. He recognizes that God tells the truth and never lies, but he's always rebelling and fighting against him. We never do that, do we? We never get irritated at God and just chuck it all. Momentarily.
Not for more than an
I'm not asking for responses. What's that? Not for longer than what?
Not for more than an hour.
Not for more than an hour. Is that the limit? Okay. So.
Set the timer.
Yes, set the timer.
Oh, wow, we get that much?
Oh, we call that pouting. How does God respond when we pout? Oh, he's all worried and fretting, and he's just pacing the floor.
No.
Loses.
And he's afraid of losing you, and oh, what can I do to get her back? Get him back? No. It's a waste of time to be pouting. But we do it anyway. All right, get to the second half here. Should we stop here and pick it up later, or you want to see how far we can get?
Stop.
Any big questions on this second half that maybe we could touch on, so that when we get to it in January, it will you'll have opportunity to process it some more.
Come on, Paul, you know you got one.
Anything you ran into here that needs a little more explanation? Are they literal wings?
I'd say they're figurative.
Okay, figurative would work fine here. Again, we're not anti-figurative. The reason so many people rebel against figures of speech in the book of Revelation because too many people teach the whole book is one big figure of speech. That none of it means anything. So we don't want to go overboard the other way. You want figures of speech in your language. I could have died is one I bring up a lot. I never can think of them. I have a list, I think 3 pages of figures of speech in the Bible, and now they've got lost in my move. But I should pull them out and give them to you, and you'll realize this is common. We do it all the time. Figure of speech. We don't do it all the time. It's just part of our language, though. And so they're okay to give him 2 wings. He's given you a picture. And so I went back and showed you that picture from the Old Testament. What the 2 wings represent, how wings were used in the Old Testament in a few ways, and then a few other verses you could look up. That just is just a means of escape. We don't know exactly what God uses for them to get out of there. They literally could fly. They could be put on planes and fly out of there. I don't know. I don't know where the airport would be out in the wilderness, but...
Well, he could just pick them up and move them.
And they could literally be picked up and moved along. So, but you want to go back and look at the 2. Exodus 19, how did God do it with Israel? When he brought them to himself on eagle's wings. Deuteronomy 32, 9 to 11, he spread his wings and caught them. He carried them on his pinions. What are those 2? You can look at those and ask yourself, what's going on here? What's the description? What's the context around that? But anything else, Paul? Any questions on the other parts here? Move that microphone toward him.
Okay, move it back.
Okay. Oh, no question? All right. All right.
You can understand, I think, now better when he has been thrown down. It's kind of like he thought he could maybe change the course of history.
Yeah.
And now that history has been proven to him, he goes, now I'm going to make it a living blank for all of you. And that's why he's going after the Jewish people and saying, I'm going to make it so terrible you wish you had it.
And so that's a good point. Why does he think at this point, at least 6,000 years from the original sin, he can now get Israel? He hasn't been able to get her for 6,000 years.
I think as soon as he gets thrown out, I think that was like the last straw. That's just me.
So he pulls out all the stops and goes after her. And how's he go after her? Literal or figurative?
Literally.
A bunch of my commentaries said it was figurative, but I don't think it's figurative. What's he do? The figurative part was out of his mouth. It may not literally be coming out of Satan's mouth, but what does he use?
Deception.
Water. To attempt to flood them. Dennis.
I wonder if he's thinking that he can maybe stop the remnant of Israel.
He's always been trying to do that.
Yeah.
He tried to kill off, when you go to the genealogies of Matthew and Luke, he's trying to interrupt them. Jeconiah was part of that. We mentioned that last week. He's constantly trying to interrupt them, trying to insert people that would mess it all up, to make it impossible, trying to get Joseph and Mary to come together.
I mean, that's going to be his focus, right? I mean,
What is?
yeah.
Because that's the Antichrist. The anti-Messiah is the one who has control of Israel. So if I can get it my way and put my person in that position of authority, my king, which is what the Antichrist is, we'll look at that in chapter 13.
That's probably his light.
Then I've succeeded. But is the Antichrist Jew or Gentile? Is the false prophet Jew or Gentile? You kind of start looking at these things and it's hard to nail down. I haven't figured it out yet. I'm not saying you can't, but I'm saying I haven't determined it. Logically, you would think the Antichrist would be a Jew and the false prophet would easily be a Gentile. But it's almost, in some ways, reverses better if it's the other way around. Dorothy?
I would think that the Jewish people, knowing the Old Testament as they do, wouldn't follow, those that are going to believe that he's the Christ would know he would have to be Jewish. I mean, I couldn't imagine.
You would think.
Yeah.
But the problem is, 95% of Israel today doesn't even follow God.
Yeah.
They're not following the Old Testament. You have a very small group of the Orthodox, and then you got these extremists on the ultra-Orthodox who have gone bonkers. And so they don't even handle it properly, but they've gone to extremes. But the Orthodox are the only ones that are still really following the law. And you kind of have to look at that and say, how many are there? But a lot of them have been totally deceived. Ultimately, there's a remnant. In some places it's implied maybe a third of Israel will be saved, but that's the remaining Israel at that point in time. So you would think they ought to know, but they've been failing for 6,000 years. well, I'm sorry. Abraham didn't show up until about 1800 BC. The flood was around 2300 BC. Creation was about 4000 BC. So for only about 4,000 years have they been fighting God as a people, roughly. And so you're wrestling with all that. So we're going to start here on the woman, verses 13 to 17, January 3rd, if I have the right date there, and we'll pick it back up. Let's pray. Father, it's I feel like pulling up a chair and a bowl of popcorn and going up in the rapture and just watching. This is going to be really exciting. But then it's not a movie, and it's not a temporary thing. Your son's going to reign forever and ever. He'll deal with another group 1,000 years after we get there and crush them because of their rebellion against you. And finally put Satan in the lake of fire where he'll never come out again. We'll get to see him, and we'll recognize a lot of things and be amazed at you. God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit. We'll be amazed at the Trinity, at the work that you are doing and will continue to do. The part that you are all-powerful and all-knowing, everywhere present. You're eternal, you're love, you're holy. And we just go on with your characteristics. And we worship you. We're amazed. We need that reminder when we're in times of difficulty. A lack of money, a lack of food, a lack of good health, a lack of a place to live, as Ken and Regina went through with their house burning. Just so many things that happen to us. And yet, in time, we can look back and see your faithfulness, see your promises kept, see your perfect love and work in our lives. And we just thank you. It's what this book does for us. And ultimately, we see Satan defeated, which is what Jesus was promised to be coming to do in the Garden of Eden in Genesis 3:15. You are good. Help us to trust you as we go out of here. And help us to proclaim you to others, I pray. In Jesus' name, amen.